Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Tuesday, March 25th, 2025, the 84th day of the year and National Medal of Honor Day, to remember the courage and sacrifice of our 3,528 Medal of Honor recipients. The first Medals of Honor ever presented were on March 25th, 1863. Many years later, Congress declared March 25th as National Medal of Honor Day. Today is also Greek Independence Day, as I mentioned, was celebrated at the White House yesterday. And on the food calendar, it's hashtag International Waffle Day. So yes, there's specials at the Waffle House and IHOP and all kinds of other places. If you gave up waffles for Lent, today is the 21st day of Lent for Christians around the world. We're halfway there. And I forgot to mention this yesterday, but if you don't know, Pope Francis is now back home at the Vatican. He was released from the hospital on Sunday after fighting pneumonia for weeks, near deadly pneumonia for weeks. He will be on strict rest and recovery. President Trump and Vice President Vance having lunch at the White House today, possibly discussing Mrs. Vance, the second lady's upcoming trip to Greenland. I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. And the president is expected to sign yet more executive orders in the Oval Office this afternoon, which means he'll be delivering remarks and taking questions. Many of those questions, no doubt, will be about yesterday's security incident involving the editor of The Atlantic being included on a group chat on the app Signal about top security plans to bomb the Houthis in Yemen. There is no sugarcoating this. Some people obviously go to make a bigger deal about it than others, but it is a big deal. And I'm not saying two wrongs make a right. But was it a big deal when Hillary Clinton kept all kinds of top secret info on her personal server in her basement? You bet it was, but not for the Democrats. More from Greg Kelly.
Did you hear about the snafu? Can we call it a snafu? A little bit of an oops maneuver? All right. We bombed the Houthis recently. I think we might still be bombing them. The terrorist group that is targeting the valuable shipping lanes in and out of the Red Sea and beyond. It's bad, bad stuff, and these guys have to be controlled. And some of our top people on our national security team were talking it out. Is now the right time? We had the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, Vice President Tulsi Gabbard, and several more people on the phone, including, unfortunately, a fake news guy somehow wound up on this call. Oh, boy. Jeffrey Goldberg is his name, and he is rotten. OK, he is the worst kind of fake news guy there is. Makes stuff up, pushes it relentlessly, tries to have an impact when, well, quite frankly, he should be more of an observer. And if there isn't anything all that interesting to observe, I do believe he will make things up. Now, somehow he was added to the call. This has been confirmed by the National Security Council spokesperson. This is the thing. It shows me that somebody on that call was actually talking to this guy. When you add somebody to a group text, it means you're probably texting him. I don't know who it was, but this is not the kind of guy who should be hanging around the Trump administration.
But we have a White House that creates chaos, to borrow from Peggy, chaos for itself. It can create chaos on its own schedule, and it still messes it up. And so we have a serious
This is what the guy is all about. Okay, he is an enemy of MAGA, an enemy of Trump, and he's the one who came up with that horrible and fake losers and suckers story, right? President Trump, who reveres those who serve, and this story was made up. It's been totally and thoroughly debunked. And it came out during, I believe, the 2020 campaign at the worst possible time, meant to have maximum negative impact by Jeffrey Goldberg. It is a little puzzling that they would be having this phone call on Signal, which is not exactly, it's not impregnable. If you've got a bunch of apps on your phone right now, there's a good chance that you have Signal. And for something that's supposed to be encrypted, this wasn't particularly encrypted. What they could do is call into the Situation Room, right? Now, sometimes all the principals are there. This is the night they got Baghdadi, right? Pretty awesome night back during the first term. But I believe you can call in on a secure phone, and I don't know. But then again, maybe President Trump's national security staff, they're leery about being on government networks because the swamp did in Trump the first time around. Very early in his term, they were leaking stuff left and right, probably the CIA, right? As soon as it started, they were leaking on him. So maybe they're just trying to avoid leaks. And so every White House has their snafu. But this one, it just shows me you got to cut these fake news reporters loose. You got to keep them at bay. Nobody should be dealing with them.
Greg Kelly is the host of Greg Kelly Reports, 9 p.m. Eastern. And talk about timing on Greg Kelly Reports tonight. Again, 9 Eastern. He will be sitting down with President Trump at the White House. You don't want to miss that. Also, a matter of timing. Those same leaders of U.S. intelligence agencies are appearing before the Senate Intelligence Committee today to testify about global security threats facing the country. The hearing actually began at 10 a.m. this morning, features testimony from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, FBI Director Patel, and several others, who will now be drilled by the committee about what happened yesterday. Democrat Mark Warner, who was already on MSNBC calling for the firing or resignation of Pete Hegseth, or perhaps Tulsi Gabbard. He's the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, along with Dianne Feinstein, Democrats Michael Bennet of Colorado, Kristen Gillibrand of New York. It is going to get ugly. It's going to be one of the highlights of the day. And this is Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic detailing it on ABC News.
I get a message request to connect with Mike Waltz, who's the National Security Advisor,
or someone who's purporting to be Mike Waltz. Not an unusual thing in Washington. I'm a journalist. I've met him in the past. So I accept it. I alerted his national security advisor shortly after 9 a.m. And then alerted Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, and a number of other officials, including Stephen Miller in the White House.
Again, that's Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic. This is House Speaker Mike Johnson, the third highest ranking Republican.
The administration is addressing what happened. Apparently an inadvertent phone number made it onto that thread. They're going to track that down and make sure that it doesn't happen again. What you did see, though, I think, was top-level officials doing their job, doing it well.
There was also a full cabinet meeting at the White House yesterday.
We like to use the words waste and abuse because they sort of sound good, but many of these things are pure fraud. Now, there was a contract that you've heard about where Stacey Abrams got $2 billion just before we took over, and it was a rush to get her the money, and that was environmental, and nobody knows what she was doing. But $2 billion. If you got $2 million, that's a lot. If you got 200,000, that's a lot. But this was $2 billion was given. Lee, do you want to talk about that? And the other one that was even worse?
EPA has now canceled over $22 billion worth of contracts. $2 billion going to this NGO that Stacey Abrams was tied to. They received only $100 in 2023. And then the Biden administration gave them $2 billion. The director of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund saw his former employer get $5 billion. So $20 billion went to just 8 NGOs, and they're all pass-throughs. And then they were giving it to other entities, many of them were pass-throughs. And what you have is all these extra middlemen, they're taking their cut. And the taxpayer ends up getting screwed. They're losing out on all this hard-earned money. They can't afford to have the federal government waste. The partnership with DOGE and Elon Musk has been incredible at EPA. Their team is very talented. We wouldn't have been able to do it without them. And of course, this mandate from President Trump to make sure that we identify every last penny, whether we're saving $50,000, $5 million, or $22 billion. We will not rest until every last penny is saved. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to do this for the American public.
All right, so Lee Zeldin there, our EPA director, and what we've seen from a lot of our other cabinet officials here, I think is cathartic is the word. This is what you want to see, I think, from your government when you're running a $36 trillion debt. You see leaders step up to the plate with things they can cut and still deliver services for the American public. I wanted to welcome back in Congressman Tim Burchett just for his reaction to what we hear. And, you know, when we look at the debt, these are the time. I mean, I know this is not going to significantly reduce the debt, but this is the mindset, Congressman, where everyone in government needs to be right now.
Yeah, I think it's setting us on the right path to reducing that $36 trillion in debt because we cannot keep paying these things. And let's be realistic about where it's going. This money is going to go a circuitous route back in the pockets of politicians in Washington. And I'm not so sure there's some not direct payments there. And that's why these people on both sides of the aisle are squealing about all this stuff. They're upset. You watch. Elon Musk has a paper trail, and they know it. And it's going to start going back, and yeah, they'll be in somebody's wife or girlfriend or somebody else. But dadgummit, he's going to get to the bottom of it. And frankly, I'm glad of it. I'm sick of it. If somebody up here is voting for money for themselves, they need to be walked out of here in handcuffs and headed straight to jail.
That would be cathartic, I think, as well, too, Congressman, if we had the proof to back that up. Thank you for sticking around with us today to get some of the initial response there from the cabinet meeting. We're going to get back to it and let you get back to work as well, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, and I love hearing this stuff. President Trump is doing what he said he was going to do.
Republican Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee on John Bachman Now. That's on N2. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem also spoke at the meeting.
If you might, Madam Secretary, say a little bit about what's happening and how well we've done at the border.
Sir, this last week I was in Arizona, California, Alaska, and Florida, and CBP literally has almost 100% operational control of the border, which means that our country is secure and that we know who's coming into this country and that they love our country and they want to help keep it great into the future. We are in the month of March, the last couple of weeks, increased our deportations by 50%. So we're now not even just getting the worst of the worst out. We're making sure that there's consequences for being here and committing crimes in our communities. And the numbers are continuing to escalate and to go up. Sir, this week I'm headed down to El Salvador. I'll be in the prison where we sent TDA members. I'll be meeting with the president and also Colombia and Mexico and talking about building these relationships so that we can continue to get people out of this country that don't belong here and take them home. And also you had talked to me about sending the message worldwide about the fact that people shouldn't be coming to this country and they shouldn't be coming here illegally. So we are in several other countries around the world with a message right now that's saying, if you are thinking about coming to America illegally and coming here, don't do it. You are not welcome. We have a legal process to becoming a United States citizen, and there are consequences if you come here illegally, and America has changed because we're putting Americans first. So we've also, the Coast Guard has done phenomenal work. I don't know if you all have reported on it, but we have broken historic records in the amount of drug interdictions that they have brought in. We've repositioned the fleet to go after the fentanyl crisis and to go after the southern border and securing it, and they've done amazing work as far as that. We were down in Florida. They brought in $500 million worth of cocaine that they had done in 14 interdictions and had brought them in, going right directly after the cartels.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem in yesterday's cabinet meeting at the White House. I saw that story on the local news over the weekend, which, by the way, it's like impossible to watch local news anymore. If you're in local news, if you're a local news director, you have to do something. It's too much fluff, too many commercials and promos and everything. It's impossible to watch. Anyway, yeah, the Coast Guard unloaded $500 million with a B, $500 million worth of drugs in Fort Lauderdale. And that happens, honestly, a couple times a year. You can add former DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to the list of those being stripped of Secret Service protection. Trump announced that yesterday as well. And sticking with the theme of the border, let's go to Rob Schmitt.
Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. This morning, 199 deported Venezuelans arrived back in their home country as deportation flights have resumed. As they walked off of this jet, you notice that they're all young men. Many are said to be Tren de Aragua, but this flight met no legal challenges as these deportations were not done under the 1798 Aliens Act that the president tried to use a couple weeks ago. These were the culmination of a much slower process that our many activist judges want to use to hamstring this administration from achieving its mandate, which is deporting the millions of people just like them behind me that Joe Biden illegally brought into this country. It is rather interesting that after creating an app that these guys could use to seek asylum with, an app on a phone for an asylum seeker to have a smartphone, and then when Biden and Mayorkas sent jets out to pick up illegals in other countries, that these judges, like Judge Boasberg in this case, were so silent as that all went down. The insanity of flying to go pick up people that clicked asylum on an app and bring them back into the country. That didn't bother anybody, not one legal injunction. But simply the process of deporting the very worst and most dangerous of what came in, the very, very worst, immediately elicited a lower court injunction that's being fought right now. The left fights dirtier. It is plain and simple. And today this all went before a 3-judge appeals court where Obama-appointed Judge Patricia Millett said this.
There were plane loads of people. There were no procedures in place to notify people. Nazis got better treatment under the Alien Enemy Act than has happened here, where the proclamation required the promulgation of regulations, and they had hearing boards before people were removed. And yet here there's nothing in there about hearing boards, there's no regulations, and nothing was adopted by the agency officials that were administering this. People weren't given notice. They weren't told where they were going.
Hearing boards. So that's the standard here for Judge Millett. And, perhaps in the few cases where Nazis were found in the United States in the late 1930s and early 1940s, maybe she's right. But you know what we didn't have 80 years ago, we didn't have an open border with millions and millions and millions of people pouring into the country unvetted. So maybe there was time to have those hearing boards. Maybe that was more logical at that time. I wonder how different it would be if 10 million Germans all came into the United States right at the beginning of the Second World War. Might have looked a little different. She didn't really talk about that. Here was Tom Homan's response to her words.
Well, that's, first of all, it's ridiculous. It's just another example of a radical judge saying something that's just disgusting, to compare anything to the Nazis, the Holocaust. We follow the law. Alien Enemies Act is clear. A law that was passed by Congress, signed by the president. We're following, unlike the last administration, we're actually following the law. What we did on those planes, we removed terrorists. MS-13 and TDA were our designated terrorist organization. We removed terrorists. And to compare that any way whatsoever with Nazis is disgusting on every level.
There you go. Border Czar Tom Homan. We're following the law. More from Rob.
The usage of the Alien Enemies Act is the bold response to the egregious act taken by the previous White House. They started this. They decimated every normal standard and practice to bring in millions of unvetted, unknown people into a country. It was suicide by immigration. We had to sit here and watch it for 4 years because largely all these judges that care so much about democracy didn't care about any of that. The American people gave Trump the mandate to cut the BS and get them out. That's exactly what this last election was about. It was a lot bigger than any judge. And now we have Obama judges crying about the treatment of the absolute worst of those millions, feeding us lines about how suspected Nazis were given more due process. On Sunday, Tom Homan again here said everyone on those planes, everyone that was sent to CICOT in El Salvador, that prison, had been fully investigated.
Well, sure. The bottom line is that plane was full of people designated as terrorists, number one. Number two, every Venezuelan migrant on that flight was a TDA member based on numerous criminal investigations, on intelligence reports, and a lot of work by ICE officers.
Well, there you have it right there. Pretty simple response to that.
That is Rob Schmitt, host of Rob Schmitt Tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. The comments from Border Czar Homan and the actions of some judges was also the topic of conversation on National Report with Sean Kreisman and Emma Reckenberg.
Homan also vowing the Trump administration would not defy court orders stemming from legal challenges over invoking the Wartime Alien Enemies Act to deport undocumented migrants from the United States. John Fabricatori joins us now, former head of ICE for the Denver region. Chris Cabrera is here, Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council. Gentlemen, welcome, and thanks for coming on. John, could I start with you to hear those words from Border Czar Tom Homan? What sort of impact does that have on actual enforcement, right? And could you talk to us about what you've noticed even in Denver?
Yeah, so, with the border being shut down the way it is, I mean, we know that, there are less criminals getting into the United States, less terrorist organizations getting in. So this is absolutely a good thing that they've shut this border down, and they're doing exactly what President Trump said that they were going to do when he took office, is secure the United States.
Yeah, and Chris, what do you think it is? We went through 4 years of the Biden administration, and we've seen record levels of illegal crossings of the U.S. southern border. We know more than 10 million came in. It could be more if you count, again, gotaways. There was no real concern, at least by that administration at this time. You come in a couple of months now, and everyone is on their P's and Q's about this. At every turn, the judicial process is playing out to say, hold on, who are you deporting one by one? But there is no concern about who is coming in. Why is that in your mind, Chris?
It just seems like we have that two-tier justice system where the folks that were asleep at the wheel a couple years back are now suddenly on it and alert. It has more to do with their political leanings than actually what's going on with the law. I mean, you look at what President Trump and Tom Homan have done, and they've done a tremendous job. I mean, it's extremely slow on the border right now. We're back to catching drugs. We're back to catching people that are trying to get away, not turning themselves in.
Chris Cabrera is the vice president of the National Border Patrol Council on Newsmax's National Report. In other news, the Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to block a judge's order to reinstate 16,000 federal employees. This is another big judicial fight. Earlier this month, a federal district judge in San Francisco ordered the government to reinstate probationary employees fired at a half a dozen different agencies under Trump's effort to reduce the size of government. The judges said the administration failed to comply with the legal procedures that were required for those layoffs. I'm pretty sure I told you about that at the time. A judge in Maryland made similar rulings last week, asking that some employees be temporarily rehired while they litigate the legality of the layoffs. And the FBI is now launching a task force to investigate attacks on Teslas and Tesla dealerships. Attorney General Pam Bondi said these people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, calling it domestic terrorism. And did you see the latest DOGE finding yesterday that millions of dollars in SBA loans, that's the Small Business Administration, a lot of those loans went to children. In one case, there was a person under 9 years old that got like $200,000. And as I mentioned earlier, Second Lady Usha Vance and one of the Vance's 3 children will be a part of a U.S. delegation, including National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, visiting Greenland this week. The group will visit historic Greenland sites, take in a dog sled race, and learn more about Greenlandic heritage. President Trump, as you know, has talked about the U.S. buying Greenland, even though Denmark, who controls it now, and NATO have said it is not for sale. Trump continues to talk about it. On Wall Street, stocks are extending yesterday's gains, opening in the green after closing sharply higher yesterday. A big day. Speaking of Tesla stock up more than 10%. We talked about how people were possibly short selling the stock. Now it appears that people are buying it up in support of Elon Musk and or DOGE. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are seeing a slight pullback this morning. At the time of this recording, Bitcoin is down about $1,000 at 87,100 and change. So the Senate intelligence hearing that I just told you about is going to be big today. And then the president will be speaking from the White House as he signs more executive orders. That will be big, of course, and it will be carried live on Newsmax. Be sure to keep up with all of the news and breaking developments throughout the day on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. Also, make sure you have the Newsmax app so you can stay up to date anywhere, anytime. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Please subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to and share it with your friends, family, and anyone else. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take a moment to remember and honor those Medal of Honor recipients. Maybe eat some waffles and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.